What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was Itachi brother? If you enjoy, then please like, share, and do comments. The Uchiha compound was quiet in the way only disappointment could make it quiet. Itachi stood near the wall, arms folded, watching the scene unfold with a stillness learned far too early. Sasuke stood in the center of the room, small hands clutching a paper he had clearly unfolded and refolded too many times. His posture was rigid, hopeful in the way only children still dared to be. Fugaku Uchiha barely looked up. His attention was fixed on something far more important: maps, reports, whispered implications of politics and power. Another mission, another obligation that outweighed a child's achievement. Itachi felt something hot coil behind his ribs. Sasuke shifted his weight, cleared his throat, and spoke quietly. Fugaku did not respond. Not with words. Not even with a glance. That was when Itachi looked away, because if he didn't, he might do something irreversible. He had killed on missions. He had stared down enemies twice his age without hesitation. But restraining himself in this room, in this house, required a different kind of discipline altogether. Sasuke lingered near the doorway after that, pausing just long enough to hope someone would notice. Someone didn't. The door slid shut with a sound far softer than the silence it left behind. Fugaku turned then, only to face Itachi. Questions followed. Tactical ones. Cold ones. The kind meant to measure worth, not concern. Itachi answered them all. Calm. Precise. Empty. He doesn't even see him, Itachi thought, jaw tightening. Not the way he saw me. Not the way a father should. That was the cruelty of it. Itachi had been shaped, sharpened, and displayed. Sasuke was being left untouched, not out of mercy, but indifference. An indifference rotted deeper than pressure ever could. Mikoto passed through the room once, hands busy, eyes distant. She smiled politely at Itachi. She did not stop. That hurt almost more. Night came, as it always did, and with it came clarity. Itachi sat alone in his room, mission gear laid out before him. Officially, he was meant to leave before dawn. Officially, everything was proceeding as ordered. Unofficially, something inside him had already snapped into place. He packed extra supplies. Civilian clothes. Food meant for two. When he stood, the decision felt final in a way missions never did. Blood could bind a clan. It could not bind loyalty. He moved through the house without hiding himself too carefully. Enough sound to seem normal. Enough care not to wake suspicion. Sasuke's door slid open under his fingers. The boy stirred instantly. Dark eyes blinked up at him, sharp even through sleep. "Oni-ai," Sasuke whispered. Itachi raised a finger gently, then softened his voice. "Come with me." That was all it took. Sasuke sat up, confusion flickering briefly before trust won out. He didn't ask why, not right away. He dressed quickly, movements neat, disciplined beyond his years. When he did speak, it was hesitant. Did I do something wrong? The question hit harder than any blade. No, Itachi said immediately, and meant it with his entire being. You did everything right. That answer alone lit something fragile behind Sasuke's eyes. They left without looking back. The village at night was a maze of shadows and rooftops. Itachi moved first, deliberately slower than usual. Sasuke followed, mimicking steps, learning with every breath. He praised him, quietly, sparingly, honestly. Sasuke soaked it in like rain after drought. At the wall, Itachi stopped him. "Think," he instructed softly. Sasuke studied the structures nearby, calculating distances, angles, risks. When he spoke, his plan was sound. They cleared the wall without alert. For one heartbeat, Itachi allowed himself to believe they might succeed without interference. Then chakra flared behind them. A voice cut through the trees, official, alert, trained. Itachi reacted instantly, pulling Sasuke close and moving. Steel followed. Shuriken split the air. Sasuke clutched him tighter, but did not scream. Good, Itachi thought grimly. Too good. More presences appeared. Umbu. Coordinated. And then, another. Distinct. Calm. Calculating. Kakashi. Of all nights. Itachi's mind raced, adapting. He scattered false trails, divided attention, unleashed a technique of his own design. Heat and pressure, steam screaming through the forest like living breath. Chaos followed. In that chaos, Itachi vanished. When silence returned, the fire country stretched wide before them. Sasuke finally spoke, voice trembling but steady. Are we in trouble? Itachi looked down at him, really looked. Yes, he answered. Then, more gently. But you won't be alone anymore. And for the first time, Sasuke smiled without fear of it being taken away. The village behind them did not notice what it had lost. Not yet. Kakashi crouched beside one of the fallen Enbu. 2 fingers pressed lightly to the man's neck. The pulse was steady. Painful bruising, a scorched shoulder, pride wounded far more than flesh. But he would live. That makes 2. Kakashi muttered, flicking across the clearing. The steam had thinned, leaving behind broken branches and the lingering scent of scorched air. Too clean. Too controlled. Itachi had never wasted movement, not even in panic. Kakashi straightened and exhaled through his mask. He bit his thumb and slammed his hand to the ground. Summoning jutsu. The ninja hounds burst into existence, noses already lowered, tails stiff with focus. Kakashi pointed toward the direction Itachi had fled. Track him. Full speed. They were gone in a blur of fur and leaves. Kakashi remained where he was, eyes half-lidded, mind racing. This doesn't add up. Itachi Uchiha did not act impulsively. He calculated. Always. Every mission, every engagement, 3 steps ahead, minimum. Which meant this wasn't panic. It wasn't betrayal for its own sake. It was a decision. Kakashi leaned against a tree, arms crossed, memories lining up whether he invited them or not. Itachi's schedule. Brutal. Back-to-back missions, no recovery time. Assignments that would have strained veteran operatives, handed casually to a child because he could handle them. At Fugaku's request. Then there was the boy. Sasuke. Kakashi frowned beneath his mask. He had heard the name far more often from Itachi than from anyone else. Casual mentions, proud ones. Quiet observations slipped into debriefings and campfire silences. But from the clan heads? Nothing. Not once had Fugaku spoken of his younger son. Makoto even less so. As if the boy existed only in the shadow of his brother. Kakashi's eye narrowed. So you didn't steal him, he thought grimly. You rescued him. A blur of movement snapped him back to the present. One of the hounds, sleek, gray, breathing hard, skidded to a stop before him. They crossed the border. The dog reported, ears flattened in frustration. Trail breaks clean at the river canyon. Too much distance. Too much care. Kakashi closed his visible eye. I figured. He dismissed the hounds with a wave. One by one, they vanished in smoke, leaving the forest eerily still. Kakashi stared in the direction of the border for a long moment. I'll report this, he said quietly to no one. But I won't lie about why. Then he turned back toward his injured teammates. The canyon yawned wide beneath the moon, water roaring far below like an endless warning. Itachi didn't hesitate. He launched from the stone marker at the fire country's edge, chakra snapping beneath his feet, body arcing cleanly across the gap. He landed without sound on the opposite statue, cloak fluttering once before settling. Only then did he look back. One of the tracking dogs stood at the far edge, hackles raised, snarling, but it did not cross. Itachi allowed himself a thin, humorless huff. Too late. He slipped into the underbrush, moving fast, putting distance behind them until the forest changed. Trees unfamiliar, soil no longer carrying Konoha's chakra signature. Only then did he slow. Only then did the small weight against his chest shift. Oni-san. The voice was quiet, uncertain. Itachi stopped. He found a fallen tree, fresh, clean, safe, and set Sasuke down carefully before taking a seat himself. For a long moment, neither spoke. Night insects filled the silence. Sasuke looked up at him, eyes searching, brows drawn together. Why? Itachi stared at the ground, fingers curling into the bark beneath him. There were 1,000 answers. None of them simple. None of them kind. He chose the truest one Sasuke could understand. Because you were being forgotten. Sasuke blinked. You weren't supposed to be. Itachi continued, voice low, controlled with effort. But you were. And I couldn't. I wouldn't let that continue. The child's hands clenched in his lap. Did I do something wrong? No, Itachi's answer was instant, sharp. Never think that. Silence again. I didn't just take you. Itachi said more quietly. I left too. That place. Our clan. It was turning us into things. Not people. Sasuke didn't fully understand. That much was clear from his expression. But he understood this. That his brother was choosing him. And that was enough. Itachi stood and extended his hand. "We'll keep moving," he said. "I'll protect you. I promise." Sasuke hesitated only a second before taking it. Together, they walked away from the lights of the hidden leaf, into a future neither of them could fully see, but one they would face side by side. Kakashi Hatake moved through the streets of Konoha with his hands in his pockets and a weight on his shoulders that had nothing to do with fatigue. Failing to apprehend a missing nin was bad enough. Failing to apprehend a 13-year-old, one who had escaped with a child in tow, was worse. He tilted his head back slightly, staring at the sky between rooftops. The village was awake in that tense, whispering way it only became when rumors moved faster than official reports. "This is going to be a fun conversation," he muttered, already picturing the Hokage's expression. As he walked, the architecture subtly shifted. Clan symbols became more frequent. Fan crests carved into gates, painted on walls, stitched into banners. Uchiha territory. Kakashi slowed, his visible eye narrowing slightly. The atmosphere here was brittle. People moved quickly, conversations hushed, heads turning sharply at every unfamiliar footstep. Fear, anger, confusion, none of it well hidden. If the clan truly prided itself on control, it was failing spectacularly this morning. So they didn't know, Kakashi realized. Not until it was already done. That thought eased the knot in his chest more than it probably should have. If the Uchiha elders themselves had been blindsided, then the blame could hardly fall entirely on an ANBU team that had been reacting, not anticipating. He passed the main estate and nearly stopped walking altogether. A crowd had gathered, not shouting. Uchiha didn't air their shame that way, but tightly clustered, tense, eyes sharp with accusation. At the center stood Fugaku Uchiha, back straight, face carved from stone. Beside him, Mikoto. She wasn't sobbing loudly. That would have drawn attention. Instead, tears slid down her face in silence, hands clenched at her sleeves as if holding herself together by force alone. A man Kakashi recognized as Akira, Fugaku's half-brother, stood a step forward, holding a letter. His voice carried just enough for those closest to hear. Kakashi paused at the edge of the gathering, instincts screaming caution. Several pairs of eyes turned toward him instantly. The glares were sharp, accusatory. "Oh, so this is my role today," he thought dryly. Convenient villain. Akira's voice shook, not with fear, but with restrained fury, as he read. It wasn't difficult to infer who the letter was from. Each sentence struck like a blade. Not ranting, not emotional. Cold, precise, final. The words weren't kind. They weren't pleading. They were condemning. Mikoto's shoulders trembled harder with each line. Fugaku did not move. If the words cut him, he did not allow it to show. Kakashi didn't need to hear every sentence to understand the whole. This wasn't a farewell written in desperation. It was a judgment passed by someone who had already made peace with burning bridges. So that's how deep it went, Kakashi thought, something uneasy settling in his chest. He moved on before the hostility could turn physical. As he walked, the letter replayed itself in fragments in his mind. Not the words, but the intent behind them. Itachi hadn't simply left. He had severed himself. And yet, he hadn't lashed out. He hadn't slaughtered anyone. He hadn't even harmed pursuers beyond what was necessary to escape. For someone carrying that much resentment, that restraint was telling. Kakashi stopped briefly outside the Hokage tower, hand resting against the cool stone. If he truly hated them that much, if the only bond he valued was his brother, a darker possibility surfaced, uninvited. Someone raised without affection, raised as a weapon, not a child, was dangerous not because of anger alone, but because of emptiness. Because if you had never been given something precious, you had nothing to lose. Konoha had been spared more than it realized. He exhaled slowly and straightened. "This is above my pay grade now," he murmured. Inside, he would report facts, observations, theories. He would leave the judgment to the Hokage. And maybe, just maybe, he would hope. Hope that wherever two Uchiha brothers had vanished to, they were finding what this village had failed to give them. Kakashi shook his head lightly as he reached for the door. I really need a distraction after this, he thought. Something light. Something stupid. A certain book title drifted into his mind. Yeah, he muttered. That'll do. 6 years later, the missing Uchiha brothers. The man simply would not stop talking. Sasuke sat cross-legged on the polished floor, back straight, expression neutral, an expression carefully cultivated through years of necessity. Inside, however, everything hurt. His eyes burned from fighting the urge to roll them. His jaw ached from holding back a yawn. His legs twitched with the desperate need to move. All of it because their current employer lacked the basic intelligence to recognize when his own voice had become a liability. Any minute now, Sasuke thought darkly, I'm going to start charging extra for listening. The merchant's voice droned on, thick with self-importance and wrapped in excuses. He paced behind his desk, gesturing wildly as if the air itself were at fault for his caravan being attacked. Just wait, Sasuke told himself. Get paid, then never see this idiot again. A familiar presence brushed against his mind. Light, controlled, unmistakably his brother. How are you holding up, Chibi? Sasuke didn't bother hiding the irritation in his mental reply. Fine. Mostly. Can I throw him out a window after we're paid? Also, stop calling me that. A flicker of amusement responded instantly. No to the murder. As satisfying as it might be. Patterns like that attract attention. What about making him regret today just a little? Sasuke pushed back, layering the thought with practiced innocence. There was a pause, brief, but telling. Don't get caught. Sasuke nearly smiled. The merchant finally circled back to his favorite topic. How things would have gone perfectly if the brothers had followed his plan exactly. As if bandits politely consulted strategy documents before attacking. Sasuke tuned him out and let his thoughts drift. 6 years. 6 years since Konoha had become a name instead of a place. The early years had been brutal. Hunger. Cold. Suspicion in every stranger's eyes. No one trusted a teenage shinobi traveling with a child, no matter how calm or capable that teenager seemed. Itachi had refused assassination work. That alone had cost them opportunities and meals. But he had been immovable on that point. Protection, escort, recovery. Work that didn't demand innocent blood. Eventually, they adapted. Bodyguard contracts. Trade routes. Quiet reputation. A man willing to fight like a demon, but who traveled with his brother openly, without shame. People noticed. Now, at 19 and 12, they were no longer curiosities. They were professionals, which was precisely why the merchant was trying to renegotiate after the job. Sasuke's gaze sharpened when the man made his mistake. Perhaps things would have gone better, the merchant sneered, if you hadn't insisted on dragging your little brother into the fight. The room chilled. Sasuke didn't look at Itachi, but he felt it. That subtle shift. That tightening presence. Itachi spoke before Sasuke could. Calm. Polite. Deadly. Sir, Itachi said evenly. Your misunderstanding lies in assuming reality follows intention. Combat does not respect plans. It respects adaptability. The merchant sputtered, affronted. The bandits were neutralized. Your goods recovered. Casualties were minimal. Itachi continued, voice smooth as glass. The objective was achieved. If you would now honor the agreed payment, we will depart. The stare he fixed the merchant with was empty. Assessing. The man swallowed. Coins clinked. A pouch hit the desk. Itachi counted them carefully. Slowly. When the merchant protested, Itachi merely tilted his head. Standard practice. There was nothing the man could say to that. They turned to leave. At the doorway, Itachi paused. One final courtesy, he said softly. The merchant looked up, irritated, and then froze. Itachi's eyes shifted. Red. Unmistakable. When criticizing others, Itachi continued, voice low, controlled. Ensure their family is not present. For your own health. The silence stretched. Then Itachi blinked. The red vanished. A pleasant smile took its place, far more unsettling than the glare had been. Have a good day. They were gone. Outside, Sasuke finally let out the breath he'd been holding. You didn't have to do that, he said, though his tone lacked any real complaint. Itachi glanced down at him. Yes, he replied simply. I did. They walked on, coin pouch secure, reputations intact, two shadows moving forward, still missing to the world they'd left behind. Sasuke waited outside, hands tucked into his sleeves, posture relaxed but alert. He didn't pace. He didn't fidget. Years on the road had carved patience into him as surely as training had carved muscle. Itachi emerged moments later. The sight of his brother made something loosen in his chest. He really is turning out well, Itachi thought. Better than I ever dared hope. He had feared this path would steal Sasuke's childhood, that saving him would simply trade one kind of damage for another. Yet somehow, against all odds, the boy had grown sharp without becoming hollow. Sasuke caught sight of him and smiled. Not the polite, guarded kind he used with strangers, but the real one. Then he sniffed dramatically toward the merchant's estate behind them. Itachi sighed, already knowing where this was going. "What are you doing?" Sasuke tilted his head, mock serious. "Either you went easy on him this time, or he's tougher than he looks." I expected a stronger reaction. Itachi closed his eyes briefly, a quiet breath leaving him. When he opened them again, there was warmth there, subtle, restrained, but unmistakable. Sasuke noticed immediately. He always did. The boy grinned, satisfied, as if he'd just won a private game only the two of them knew they were playing. Most people mistook Itachi's calm for emptiness. Sasuke knew better. He had learned to read the minute shifts, the barely softened gaze, the fractional curve of a mouth, the way his brother's shoulders eased when he felt safe. Itachi, for his part, had learned something too. Not how to feel. He'd always felt, but how to let those feelings exist without crushing them down into usefulness. One more thing Sasuke had given him, without ever realizing it. "We've got time," Itachi said after a moment. "Do you want to train?" The reaction was instantaneous. "Yes. Now." Immediately. Itachi chuckled as Sasuke very carefully did not grab his sleeve and drag him off. The restraint alone was impressive. The training ground sat tucked between old stonework and trees. Neutral territory, familiar, forgotten by most. They moved through drills and sparring patterns until the sun shifted and shadows stretched long. Sasuke pushed himself hard. Too hard. Itachi let him, up to a point. 6 hours later, the boy was done. Not defeated, not injured, just spent. Growth earned honestly. That was the second reason Itachi had accepted the job in this city. They returned to the inn just after dusk. The same room they always took. Sasuke barely made it to the bed before collapsing, breath evening out almost instantly. Perfect. Itachi unpacked quietly, checked the locks, then slipped back out. The innkeeper gave him a knowing nod, one guardian acknowledging another. Sasuke would be safe. Which mattered, because where Itachi was going next was no place for a 12-year-old. The house of the Night Blossom Tree was discreet, clean, and ruthlessly well-managed. Sakura-kusen studied him the moment he entered, eyes sharp, missing nothing. Time had treated her kindly, but it was intelligence, not beauty, that ruled the place now. "You look tired," she observed calmly. "Orchid will be available shortly, if you'd like to wait." "That would be fine," Itachi replied, respectful as always. He chose familiarity tonight. Quiet, steady, no excess. When Orchid appeared, her smile was genuine. Apple Blossom pouted openly from across the room, earning a faint shake of Itachi's head and a promise for another time. Up the stairs. A small room. Clean sheets. Low light. The world narrowed. What passed there did not need to be detailed. It was enough to say that Itachi allowed himself, briefly, to be human without expectation. No mission. No vigilance. No weight of responsibility pressing against his spine. Just rest. When he finally left, the night felt lighter. He returned to the inn, to the quiet rise and fall of Sasuke's breathing, and sat for a moment beside the bed. Still here. Still together. That, Itachi knew, was the real victory. Sasuke waited outside the room, leaning lightly against the wall with his arms folded. He wasn't bored, just patient. That patience, Itachi thought as he stepped out moments later, had been earned the hard way. He really did grow up right, Itachi reflected. Somehow, that realization still surprised him. When he had taken Sasuke and left everything behind, he had feared the worst, that survival would harden the boy too early, that laughter would be replaced with caution, that childhood would be nothing more than a concept they talked about in hindsight. And yet, Sasuke had kept something bright. Sasuke noticed him instantly and smiled. Then he sniffed theatrically in the direction of the merchant's estate. Itachi sighed. "What now?" Sasuke squinted, thoughtful. "Either you were merciful today, or that guy had stronger nerves than I gave him credit for. I expected a more noticeable scent." Itachi shook his head, a quiet huff of amusement escaping him before he could stop it. Sasuke caught it, and his grin widened. The smile Itachi gave in return was subtle, barely there. But Sasuke saw it anyway. He always did. Where others saw a calm, distant mercenary, Sasuke read the small signs, the softened eyes, the tension easing from his shoulders, the faint warmth that never quite reached his mouth. One more thing I didn't ruin, Itachi thought wryly. We've got time today, he said aloud. Want to train? The response was immediate. Yes. Now. Itachi chuckled as Sasuke very carefully refrained from grabbing his sleeve and dragging him away. By the time the sun dipped, Sasuke had given everything he had. 6 solid hours of focused effort left him drained but satisfied. He learned quickly, adapted faster, and listened, something Itachi valued more than raw talent. They returned to the inn at dusk. Sasuke barely reached the bed before collapsing face first into the mattress, out cold within seconds. Perfect. Itachi tidied the room, locked the door, and stepped back out briefly. The innkeeper nodded knowingly. Sasuke would be watched. He always was. That was enough. Morning came quietly. When ninja mercenaries needed work, they rarely went looking. Work found them, through reputation, rumor, and word of mouth. Still, keeping one's ears open never hurt. Sasuke did exactly that over breakfast. Between mouthfuls, he listened. Traitors, guards, loose tongues. And there it was, a rumor worth noting. A wealthy man. Travel plans. A need for protection. Trust mattered more than brute force. Interesting. He finished eating, thanked the waitress, who barely hid her disappointment that Itachi wasn't present, and headed upstairs. Itachi, shockingly, was still asleep. Sasuke stared. It's nearly midday. He knocked lightly. A vague grunt answered. Definitely asleep. Sasuke peeked inside to find Itachi face down on the bed, one pillow hugged, another pressed firmly over his head, as if it might block out reality itself. Sasuke planted his hands on his hips, glaring. Even I'm not this lazy. Waking Itachi when he didn't want to wake was tricky. The bed took up most of the room. Dragging him off it was not an option. Then Sasuke noticed bare feet. A slow, dangerous grin spread across his face. 5 minutes later, Itachi was fully awake and sitting on Sasuke. This is your fault, Itachi muttered darkly. Let me up, Sasuke protested, voice muffled by sheets. I could have used a worse method. You could have let me sleep. Yeah, but then, MMPH. Itachi shifted, then finally stood. Sasuke scrambled up, turned his back, crossed his arms, and adopted the most offended posture he could manage. Itachi sighed. Deeply. What was so important you had to do that? I don't know if I want to tell you now. Itachi narrowed his eyes. Moments later, the room descended into chaos. Pillows, laughter barely suppressed, a struggle neither of them was really trying to win. Are we enjoying ourselves? They froze. The innkeeper's wife stood in the doorway, unimpressed. No, ma'am, Sasuke said instantly. We're done. See that you are, she replied. And don't destroy my pillows. Yes, ma'am. She left. Sasuke collapsed into silent laughter. Itachi turned red, then smacked him lightly with a pillow. Eventually, calm returned. Now, Itachi said, resigned. What was it you wanted to tell me? Sasuke wiped his eyes. Job. Heard about it downstairs. That got his attention. They returned to the common room. Itachi ate while speaking with the men Sasuke had identified. Familiar faces. At least one man Itachi trusted. A wealthy client. Travel. A daughter. Secrecy. High standards. Itachi thanked them and stood. Outside, Sasuke asked, so? I think it's worth checking. Before they could move. That feeling. Itachi flinched. Sasuke followed his gaze. You forgot about them? Sasuke hissed. It happens. No, it doesn't. Itachi-sama. Sasuke-kun. They ran. The street erupted with laughter as locals placed bets. The brothers didn't slow down. Some reputations, unfortunately, followed you everywhere. Itachi leaned back against the rough bark of the tree, letting the texture ground him. The clearing was quiet now, too quiet after the earlier chaos. Sasuke lay sprawled beside him in the shade, face turned toward the earth, breathing slow and even. The sprint from their unwanted admirers had burned off excess energy, leaving behind the kind of exhaustion that felt earned. At least the run was honest, Itachi thought grimly. The interview, however, had been anything but. The wealthy lord had spoken in circles, careful words, measured smiles, no commitment. Not rejection, not acceptance. Just hesitation. Itachi understood caution, but hesitation was poison to mercenaries. You couldn't eat on maybe. His gaze drifted to the sky, filtering through the leaves. Money mattered. not in a greedy sense, but in a practical one. Beds weren't free. Food wasn't free. Neither were medicines, replacement weapons, or the fees that kept their names clean and protected. Guild dues, he remembered, jaw tightening. Soon, the Mercenaries Guild had been their shield as much as their badge. It vouched for them, mediated disputes, paid ransoms if things went wrong. In exchange, it demanded accountability and regular payment. A fair trade. Itachi believed that. He always had. The guild also did something else, quietly and without fanfare. It ensured Konoha couldn't simply drag them back. Runaways were one thing. Criminals were another. As long as the brothers stayed clean, the guild's backing kept old ghosts at bay. He glanced down. Sasuke had shifted slightly, cheek pressed to the dirt, fingers twitching faintly as he slept. Soldier's instinct, Itachi noted. Sleep when you can. He rested a hand on the boy's head without thinking. Sasuke sighed softly, the sound small and content. Something warm and painful settled in Itachi's chest. He had always been drawn to unanswered questions, patterns that didn't align, stories that were too polished to be true. That curiosity had once led him into the Uchiha archives. He hadn't expected what he found. If it had been isolated incidents, individual failures, rare stains on an old banner, he might have accepted it. Every ancient clan had skeletons. History was never clean. But this was different. Repetition, protection, excuses dressed as honor. He had confronted Fugaka once. Once was enough. The memory still carried the phantom ache of old injuries. The lesson burned deep. Loyalty to the clan outweighed truth. Silence was obedience. Obedience was survival. That night had cracked something in him that never healed. After that, he drifted. Emotionally, spiritually. He learned to wear the mask better, but inside, the foundation had already rotted. Only two people noticed. Sasuke, too young to understand, but old enough to sense that his brother was hurting. Old enough to try, in his own quiet ways, to fix what he couldn't name. And Shursui. Itachi's jaw tightened at the name. Shursui had seen through the calm, had asked questions no one else dared to, had cared enough to keep asking. I wish he hadn't, Itachi thought, bitterness flaring. I wish he'd looked away like the rest. Bound by Fugaka's command, Itachi had never told him the truth. Only hints, fragments, shadows. Shursui had filled in the blanks himself, and filled them wrong. He thought Itachi despised the clan itself, thought the distance was arrogance, rejection. They argued, often, quietly at first, then louder. Each conversation sharpened the rift instead of closing it. The worst of it came before that mission. High rank, high risk, glory promised. Their last fight had been raw, words cutting where blades never could. Neither willing to yield, neither willing to fully explain. When Shursui left, Itachi had felt relief. Time, he'd thought. We'll cool down. We'll talk when he gets back. He never did. The memory surged unbidden. Shursui returned broken, carried by teammates with blood-soaked hands and hollow eyes. A mission that demanded perfection. A moment of distraction that proved fatal. The clan decided on its culprit quickly. Itachi. Even now, years later, the weight of that judgment crushed his lungs. Shursui's teammates spoke of melancholy, of hesitation, of thoughts elsewhere. The clan didn't need proof. They needed someone to blame. And Itachi, silent, distant, already marked as different, fit perfectly. He blamed himself long before anyone else did. The funeral came under heavy clouds. Appropriate. He stood through it without tears, muscles locked, throat burning. Poisonous stares bored into him from every side, daring him to leave. He stayed. He stayed until everyone else was gone. Except Sasuke. Itachi's breathing hitched as the memory pressed closer, standing alone beside fresh earth, chest tearing itself apart while his face remained blank. Conditioning had stolen even the mercy of tears. Sasuke had stood beside him, small hand gripping his sleeve. That had been enough to keep him standing. Itachi exhaled slowly, forcing the present back into focus. He opened his eyes. Sasuke stirred, blinking sleepily. "Nisan," he murmured. "I'm here," Itachi said quietly. The boy nodded and drifted back under. Itachi remained still, hand resting where it was. The past would never let him go, but neither would he let it take everything. Not while Sasuke breathed beside him. So Sasuke had cried for him. The memory rose unbidden, sharp as a blade drawn too quickly. Sasuke's small body had been pressed against his leg, fingers locked desperately around his hand as rain soaked them both. The child hadn't understood death, not fully, but he had understood loss. And he had understood that his brother was breaking. Itachi had stood there, unmoving, eyes fixed on the stone bearing Shirsue's name. One thought had echoed, growing clearer the longer he stared. If we hadn't fought, he would have come back. If I had stayed silent, he would be alive. The realization crushed him. I did this. The world had narrowed, sound fading, until his knees gave out and the sky finally opened. Rain poured down as if the heavens themselves were condemning him. He might have stayed there until dawn, until his body failed him entirely, if not for Sasuke's shaking voice begging him to come home. Not because Itachi wanted to live, but because Sasuke wouldn't leave him. He remembered stumbling back through the streets, soaked and hollow. The fever came quickly. Mikoto's hands were frantic, her voice sharp with worry as she shoved him into bed, scolding him for staying out in the cold rain. He barely heard her. The next 2 days were a blur of heat, pain, and pounding agony behind his eyes. Headaches so intense they bordered on delirium. On the 3rd day, he rose, unsteady, exhausted, but alive. And then he looked into the mirror. His eyes had changed. Not permanently, only for seconds, but long enough to burn the image into his mind. A pattern he had never seen before. A power he had never wanted. The forbidden records confirmed it. Mangekyo Sharingan. A dojutsu awakened through unbearable loss. Through killing one's closest bond. Itachi had laughed when he read it. A hollow, broken sound. I didn't kill him, he had thought, but I wished I had died instead. The abilities described were monstrous. A single glance capable of dragging an enemy into a fabricated world of endless suffering. Mind shattered, bodies failing, death either instant or slow. He closed the record with shaking hands. I don't want it. I never wanted it. For a time, he had truly considered following Shisui. Penance felt appropriate, necessary, but Sasuke existed. Sasuke, already whispered about, already treated differently. A child stained by association, isolated because his brother carried darkness. So Itachi lived, and he swore he would never use that power. A vow broken more times than he cared to count. Not for himself, never for pride, but always for Sasuke. When the world threatened to take the boy from him, vows became meaningless. Sasuke had asked once about his eyes. One look, cold, absolute, had ended the question. I owe him the truth, Itachi thought. Someday, but not today. Today, they had business. Itachi stirred, drawing himself back into the present, and tapped Sasuke's shoulder lightly. Time, he said. Sasuke blinked awake, stretched with lazy grace, and yawned, a sight that would have driven the village fangirls into hysterics. Itachi snorted and turned away, setting off toward the town. The mansion loomed ahead. Sasuke studied it critically. Big, yes, but not ostentatious. More money than taste. What caught his attention wasn't the structure itself, but the nature of it. Rental, Sasuke muttered under his breath. That changed things. He's wealthy enough to rent something like this, but nervous enough to avoid permanence. Why? With money like that, Torimiya Hiroshino could hire an entire private force. So why the secrecy? Why the indecision? Sasuke glanced at his brother. Itachi's expression was unreadable, which meant he had already noticed everything Sasuke had, and more. The iron gate rang loudly as Itachi struck it, 3 measured blows. Minutes passed. Finally, a servant stormed out, face twisted with irritation, until he met Itachi's eyes. The irritation evaporated. We have an appointment, Itachi said calmly. 10 minutes before sunset. The man swallowed, nodded far too quickly, and ushered them inside. That look again, Sasuke thought. I really need to learn that. They were led to a small reception room. Tea arrived almost immediately, along with a maid who fluttered far too close to Itachi. Sasuke tried to shoo her away. It didn't work. Fangirls were immune to intimidation. Eventually, Torimiya Hiroshino arrived. The man wasted little time. He needed guards. Reliable ones. For himself and his daughter. The destination remained vague. His words said calm. His posture screamed fear. Sasuke watched carefully. Torimiya wasn't lying about something, but he was definitely hiding something else. The man had no enemies. No scandals. No grudges. A quiet spice trader who should have lived an unremarkable life. Which meant the problem wasn't him. It was his daughter. Jessanina. Sasuke remembered her clearly now. Quiet, polite, pretty in a way that didn't demand attention. Her movements were graceful, her manners flawless. She avoided the spotlight instinctively. But when she had briefly looked up, those eyes, too intense, too aware, there was nothing wrong with her. But something was different. And Sasuke knew, without knowing how, that whatever trouble awaited them, it would begin with her. Jessanina's presence was wrong. Not violently wrong. Not corrupted. Just misplaced. Sasuke felt it more than consciously recognized it at first. The way her chakra pressed against his senses without flaring, vast but muted, like a deep lake with no ripples. It was one of the highest chakra reserves he had ever encountered. And she was terrified. Her shyness wasn't natural timidity. It was learned, conditioned, the kind drilled into a child who had been taught, explicitly or otherwise, that being noticed meant pain. Her manners were flawless to the point of rigidity. Her movements were smooth in a way that made the eye slide past her without lingering. She wasn't trying to be beautiful. She was trying to be invisible. If Sasuke hadn't already been searching for inconsistencies, he might have missed it entirely. She's the reason, he realized. Everything points back to her. Torimiya's fear. The secrecy. The urgency to leave without explanation. But why? That part eluded him. Itachi, however, had gone very still. From the corner of his eye, he studied Jessanina as she entered and took her seat beside the man she called father. Her chakra signature brushed his senses again. Calm, contained, impossibly deep. I've felt this once before, he thought grimly. Not identical, but close enough to make his skin crawl. And Torimiya, the man had no chakra to speak of. A true civilian. His features spoke of a regional fire country lineage. Brown hair, pale blue eyes, entirely unremarkable. Jessanina shared none of that. If there's blood between them, Itachi judged, it's distant at best. Then there was the quality of her chakra. Naruto Uzumaki, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, had radiated barely restrained violence, even as a child. A storm bound by seals. Jessanina was different. What lived inside her was quiet, serene. That realization snapped everything into place. Torimiya finished restating his cover story. Itachi cut through it cleanly. You fear hunters more than bandits, he said evenly. Not thieves, but shinobi sent to retrieve what you're hiding. Torimiya stiffened. You fear they want to turn your daughter into a weapon. The silence that followed was absolute. Torimiya's composure cracked, sweat beading at his temples. Jessanina's fingers tightened in her lap, eyes dropping as if she had expected this moment all along. Sasuke stared at Itachi in open disbelief. How? Torimiya managed. I've encountered a similar chakra once, Itachi replied calmly. That individual was feared without cause. A child. Dangerous only in potential. Understanding dawned slowly on Torimiya's face. The Nine-Tails host, he whispered. So it's true. You are Uchiha. Itachi did not deny it. And my daughter, Torimiya said softly, placing a hand over Jessanina's clenched fingers, is like him. A long look passed between the two men. Then we should speak honestly, Torimiya said at last. I agree. 2 hours later, the agreement was settled. And Sasuke was livid. Next time you want to kill me, he snapped as they stormed down the darkening street. Just stab me. Don't drop information like that out of nowhere. Itachi accepted the tirade in silence. Hunter Nin, demon hosts, political fallout. Sasuke continued. Do you enjoy shaving years off my life? I acted on instinct, Itachi said quietly. Sasuke whirled on him. You nearly acted me into a grave. He stalked ahead, boot striking stone sharply. Itachi waited. As expected, Sasuke slowed. So, the boy said without turning around, what exactly is a Jinchuriki? Itachi blinked. I never told you. No, Sasuke said flatly. You did not. Itachi gestured toward the river. Then we should speak somewhere private. They walked to the rapids-fed branch, where the roar of water drowned all other sound. Moonlight shattered across white spray. Itachi watched the river for a long moment. You've heard of the Nine-Tails, he began. Sasuke nodded. The Yondaime sealed it. That's the story. Yes, Itachi said. But the fox did not die. Sasuke frowned. It was bound, Itachi continued, inside a human child. That child became a container. A Jinchuriki. Understanding crept in slowly. So, Sasuke said carefully, Jessanina has something like that inside her. Yes. And someone wants it. Itachi closed his eyes briefly. Yes. The river roared on, indifferent. Sasuke stared at the water, then finally said, very quietly, "Then we're not just bodyguards, are we?" Itachi did not answer. He didn't need to. Wrong. Itachi said quietly. The demon could not be destroyed. So it was sealed into a human infant. Sasuke stopped short. What? Itachi nodded once, the motion heavy. The child became the container. A living seal. The village survived, but history gained a new kind of problem. He turned slightly, making sure Sasuke was listening, really listening. Beasts like the Kyuubi influence their hosts. Over time, most Jinchuriki lose stability. Some lose themselves entirely. And because they house power on the scale of natural disasters, they can wield it. Understanding dawned, slow and cold. So people thought the kid would go insane, Sasuke said, voice tight. That he'd wipe them all out. Yes. But he didn't, Sasuke continued. Or else the world would know. That is because the seal was crafted by the Yondaime, Itachi replied. A man of rare genius. Strength alone doesn't make a Hokage, judgment does. He understood restraint. For a moment, Itachi's gaze softened with genuine respect. Then his eyes hardened again. Have you ever heard of the Beast of Stone? Sasuke swallowed. Yeah. That was another Jinchuriki, Itachi said. But Stone sought a weapon, not balance. They forced the seal without care for the host. The memory of what he had read still turned his stomach. The result was a creature that could not be reasoned with. The Yondaime fought it personally. I am certain that battle shaped his choices later. Silence fell between them, broken only by the river. So Jessanina, Sasuke said slowly, she's one too. Yes. But, not like that, Sasuke insisted. I didn't feel anything violent. Neither did you. No. Itachi agreed. Her seal is stable. Or the being within her is different. Then why hunt her? Sasuke demanded. She doesn't want to fight. She's not a threat. Itachi looked at him. That is where logic ends, he said. She ceased being human the moment she became a vessel. To the world, her will no longer matters. She exists as a resource. Sasuke's face twisted with disgust. That's why I agreed to help, Itachi finished. Sasuke exhaled sharply, then frowned. Even if it means taking them to the Fire Country border? Yes. That's not the part I'm worried about. Sasuke snapped. You told him we're Uchiha? You said we never do that. Itachi closed his eyes briefly. It was necessary. How? I learned his truth, Itachi said calmly. I gave him one of mine. Mutual destruction is a powerful guarantee. Sasuke's anger faltered. So if he betrays us, he exposes himself, Itachi said. If we betray him, he exposes us. That balance keeps everyone honest. Sasuke looked away, fists clenched. I still hate it. So do I. Itachi replied, ruffling his hair as he stood. Come. We train tomorrow. Your right side guard is still sloppy. Oi, your base guard isn't perfect either. It doesn't protect organs. Itachi called back as he walked off. Miles away, Torimiya Hiroshino paced his sitting room, anxiety wearing grooves into the floor. Knowing a secret did not equal trust. Jessanina sat quietly by the fire, hands folded, eyes calm. I trust them, she said softly. The first words she'd spoken all evening. Torimiya stopped. How can you be sure? They abandoned the very village we're running toward. Jessanina's eyes shifted. For a heartbeat, they were no longer entirely human. He accepted me without hatred. The presence behind her voice said, deep and resonant. He did not fear what I am, and he would never endanger the one he loves. Torimiya bowed his head slightly. I have seen what you can do, he whispered. And I fear it. As is wise, the being replied. But know this. If they betray us, we have leverage. And if they become a threat, a faint, terrible smile curved her borrowed lips. I welcome it. Then the presence receded. Jessanina blinked, human once more. Torimiya shuddered, and prayed that the Uchiha brothers remained exactly what they appeared to be. Because if they didn't, even demons had limits. I am going to die, Sasuke decided calmly as he moved across the rooftops. Not dramatically, not heroically, just quietly, probably by strangulation. Stalking your own brother, your very dangerous, hyper-aware, former EMBU brother, was not a healthy life choice. Sasuke knew this, and yet here he was, stepping lightly, suppressing chakra, heart thudding with equal parts fear and curiosity. Torimiya had announced that final preparations would take several days. Relax, he'd said. That had been mistake number one. Itachi had taken that as permission to train Sasuke until his muscles screamed for mercy. Then, far more suspiciously, had announced he was going for a walk after dinner. A walk. At night. Alone. Sasuke had narrowed his eyes then. He wasn't that naive. Somehow, by miracle or miscalculation, he had convinced Itachi he was exhausted. That alone was worrying. It meant his brother wasn't watching his back the way he usually did, which meant Sasuke could follow. The neighborhood changed quickly. Lanterns, laughter, music, clothing that defied physics. Sasuke nearly slipped off a roof. Focus. Focus. I am a shinobi. I am not. Oh, nine hells. He forced his gaze away and kept moving, ears burning. Itachi, infuriatingly, walked straight through the chaos as if none of it existed. Then he entered that building. Sasuke froze. The sign was tasteful, elegant, refined. The house of the night blossom tree. Understanding hit him like a thrown brick. Oh. He repositioned to a nearby rooftop with a clear view of the entrance and waited. Minutes passed. Then a window opened halfway up the building. Sasuke looked without thinking. Regretted it instantly. His brain short-circuited. His brother was there, shirtless, relaxed, entirely too comfortable, and not alone. Sasuke stared, then gaped, then stopped breathing. The universe had just expanded in ways he was deeply unprepared for. Suddenly, the window slammed shut, and Itachi's face appeared. Not relaxed, not amused, just deadly calm. Sasuke didn't need lip-reading to understand. Leave. Now. Yes, sir. He vanished. Later. Much later. Apple Blossom closed the shutters with a lazy smile. So that's the famous little brother? Itachi exhaled slowly, redirecting his thoughts away from homicide. He talks more than he should, Itachi said evenly. Still cute, she teased. Didn't look so little. In a few years, Itachi replied mildly. I might let him visit. Under supervision. Apple Blossom laughed. I'll look forward to it. Itachi did not elaborate. Sasuke sneezed halfway back to the inn and shuddered violently. I am doomed, he decided again. It was nearly dawn when Itachi returned. The room was dark, quiet, a familiar lump beneath a blanket. He stood there for a long moment, considering consequences. Then he grabbed the blanket and yanked. YH. Sasuke rolled, arms up, eyes wide, guilt written all over his face. Care to explain? Itachi said softly. What you were doing earlier? I didn't know. You didn't know? Itachi repeated. Yes. Did it occur to you? Itachi continued evenly. That I might have reasons for privacy? Sasuke swallowed. I was curious. Oh, that explained everything. Oh, Itachi said. Curious. This was not a good tone. Well then, Itachi continued, far too calmly. Perhaps I should educate you. Nope. No. I withdraw my curiosity. Apple Blossom was very interested in meeting you. Sasuke went pale, then red, then both. Who? You admired her earlier. I did not. Only half of her, really. Stop. Truly, appreciation requires. Enolo, please. Sasuke buried his head under a pillow, mortified beyond recovery. For the first time in years, Itachi laughed aloud. He sat beside him. No more spying? Never again, Sasuke groaned. If I get curious, I'll ask. Maybe. Itachi lifted the pillow just enough to see the crimson face beneath. You know you're evil, right? With you reminding me? Itachi said dryly. How could I forget? A pillow flew. Another followed. Now, boys, came a familiar voice from the doorway. What have I said about pillow fights? Both froze. Yes, ma'am, they chorused. The innkeeper's wife shook her head fondly and walked away. Watching them, one might almost forget what they were. Almost. Two brothers. Still learning where the lines were, and why some existed at all. The morning after the almost pillow fight found the brothers standing once more at Torimiya Hirashino's rented estate. Torimiya wasted no time with pleasantries. His anxiety had sharpened overnight into urgency. They needed to leave. Now, not later, not after more waiting. Konoha was the destination, and every hour spent here felt, to him, like tempting fate. Itachi had calmly pointed out the obvious flaw. You and your daughter are civilians, he had said. Our speed will be limited by yours. Torimiya had smiled tightly. That will not be a problem. He had then led them, not to the front gate, but down through the house, out past the garden, and directly into the stables. That was when Itachi's composure cracked. Two ordinary horses waited patiently, a gentle mare and a sturdy gelding. And beside them, Itachi stopped dead. The other two mounts were roughly horse-sized, four-legged, with flowing manes and tails that suggested familiarity, right up until one noticed the scales, the forked horns, the clawed hooves, and the unmistakably draconic heads complete with sharp teeth and predatory eyes. The golden male lifted his head and fixed Itachi with a glare that radiated judgment. Itachi felt sweat break out along his spine. "Torimiya-san," he said carefully. "Yes, you are aware," Itachi continued, choosing each word with care, "that you possess two Kirin." "Oh, of course," Torimiya replied cheerfully, rubbing the gelding's nose. "A client paid me with them. Remarkable creatures. I was told they're excellent mounts for fighters." The merchant looked pleased, expectant. Itachi did not return the look. "Sasuke and I," he said slowly, "do not know how to ride." The Kirin snorted, lips curling to expose sharp teeth. The stable fell silent. Jessanina paused mid-stroke on her mare and glanced over, eyes widening slightly. My apologies," Torimiya said, flustered. "I assumed, given your bearing." Itachi flinched internally. Noble manners implied noble upbringing. Noble upbringing implied riding. It was a reasonable assumption. Shinobi rarely require mounts, Itachi explained, and even more rarely have time to learn. What he did not say was that animals, particularly large, temperamental ones, did not like him, and the feeling was mutual. Torimiya wrung his hands. "Well, I can teach you, and I've heard Kirin are easier than horses." The golden male stamped one clawed hoof and snorted loudly, as if personally offended by the claim. Itachi stared back at it. The Kirin stared harder. Both seemed to agree this was going to be unpleasant. Neither man had a choice. Torimiya had exhausted every other option for guards. Itachi knew this, he'd checked, and the brothers desperately needed the pay. Guild fees had risen again, and savings only stretched so far. So riding lessons it would be. A soft laugh cut through the tension. "Sasuke." The Crimson Kirin had apparently decided the younger Uchiha was acceptable. More than acceptable, it was nuzzling his hair affectionately, eliciting a surprised laugh from him. "Oh, of course," Itachi muttered under his breath. "Traitor. That's an excellent sign," Torimiya said, visibly relieved. Jessanina watched Sasuke with a gentle smile and a faint blush that did not go unnoticed. Itachi noticed, and did not like it. Several hours, and many bruises, later, Itachi was reassessing several life choices. The Golden Kirin, Stardance, unfortunately, had tried to impale him 8 times. The 9th attempt was narrowly avoided by a sharp tug on the reins and a solid thump between the horns. "Enough," Itachi growled. Stardance snorted and chewed the bit with exaggerated disdain. Torimiya watched with poorly concealed doubt. Itachi ignored him. Sasuke, meanwhile, rode Fire Shadow as if born to the saddle. The Crimson Kirin responded to the slightest shift of weight, ears flicking attentively. She clearly adored her rider. Itachi sent him a sour look. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked dryly over their private link. "Yeah," Sasuke admitted. "Jessanina's nice." That explained everything. Itachi's attention snapped forward again just in time for Stardance to decide a perfectly innocent stump was a mortal enemy. The beast reared, Itachi swore, fought for balance, and barely kept his seat. Torimiya winced. Itachi pretended not to notice. The last time Stardance had spooked, Itachi had been thrown clear, and it had taken Jessanina nearly an hour to coax the Kirin close enough to be caught. He clenched his jaw. "I hate being right," he thought grimly. And worse. Sasuke was falling behind on rear guard. "Anything on our tail?" Itachi asked sharply. "Oops," Sasuke admitted sheepishly. "Focus," Itachi warned. "There will be time for distractions later." "We're not flirting." "Of course not," Itachi replied flatly. "Nina." Sasuke went red and slowed Fire Shadow, falling back into position. Good. They rode on. Uneasy mounts, uneasy alliances, and a road ahead that promised far more trouble than any of them were admitting. And Itachi couldn't shake the feeling that the real danger hadn't even begun yet. Sasuke had never been this embarrassed in his life. Not even close. Being caught spying on his brother had been mortifying, yes, but that had been personal humiliation. This was professional humiliation, and that cut deeper. Much deeper. He was rearguard. Rearguard did not get distracted. Rearguard did not let attention drift. Rearguard especially did not get reminded, out loud, by his own brother to do his job. I'm an Uchiha. Sasuke scolded himself fiercely. A shinobi. Trained by him. I should know better. Even if Jessanina was kind. And pretty. And easy to talk to. And, no. Stop. Focus. He forced his breathing to steady and widened his awareness, scanning the road behind them for unfamiliar chakra signatures or disturbances. Fire Shadow flicked her tufted ears back at the sharp exhale, clearly picking up on his mood. Sasuke smiled despite himself and stroked her neck. The Crimson Kirin responded instantly, arching her neck, flagging her tail, her step lightening into a graceful prance. Kirin really were strange creatures. Their bodies were vaguely deer-like, but far heavier, muscles packed dense beneath scaled hides. Long crests of fur ran along their spines and under their tails, contrasting with the smooth scales everywhere else. Tufts softened the joints, ankles, knees, shoulders, while their heads looked carved straight from ancient dragon statuary. Fire Shadow was slightly smaller than Stardance, slimmer, but not by much. Both dwarfed the horses in strength and intelligence. Sasuke had been riding her for barely 2.5 days, yet she already responded to his posture more than the reins. He had taught her to kneel for saddling, to lower her head for the bit. These days, he barely needed either. Praise and smoked meat had worked wonders. Though lately, he suspected praise alone might be enough. His gaze drifted, without permission, toward Jessanina. She'd changed since leaving the city. Subtly, but unmistakably. Her posture was straighter, her eyes more alert. She looked around with quiet curiosity now, smiling softly at birdsong, at sunlight through leaves. She wasn't hiding as much. She really was pretty. Maybe not striking, not the kind who turned heads, but balanced. Real. He barely noticed the small imperfections in her features anymore. More than that, she didn't push. She listened, responded, helped without making a show of it. When Sasuke fumbled with Fire Shadow's tack, she offered assistance gently, without judgment. And Sasuke liked her. Which meant, damn it, he snapped his focus back just in time. Stardance suddenly leapt sideways with explosive force. Itachi was thrown. The fall was brutal. Jessanina gasped. Torimiya swore aloud. Sasuke reached out instinctively through their mental link, and recoiled. Not pain, not shock. Anger. Pure, sharp, controlled fury. Sasuke froze. Itachi rose slowly, stiffly. The fall had hurt. Anyone could see that, but he didn't acknowledge it. His eyes locked onto Stardance's. The Kirin backed away, unsettled, but didn't flee. Then Itachi moved. Hands shot out, grabbing Stardance's antlers. With a grunt that was half breath, half warning, Itachi lifted the massive creature and slammed it onto its back. The ground shook. Stardance tried to scramble, then froze as Itachi's grip clamped onto his muzzle with crushing strength. Do not test me, Itachi growled. Red eyes burned into gold. The Kirin whimpered and stilled completely. Understand. A slow, careful nod. Itachi released him. Up. Stardance rose. Stand. The Kirin didn't so much as twitch as Itachi mounted again. Then Itachi turned his glare outward. Well, he snapped. Are we standing here all day? He kicked Stardance into motion. The Kirin obeyed instantly, limping, but clearly trying to hide it. Torimiya stared in open shock. What, how? Sasuke rode up beside him quickly. Don't ask him anything right now. Trust me. But that Kirin, he's enormous. Nisan was ANBU captain, Sasuke said calmly, as if that explained everything. Captain, at 13. Torimiya's jaw dropped. But that means. Strong, Sasuke finished. Yes. You too? Sasuke considered. I need more chakra than him. But yeah, probably. Torimiya looked like his worldview had collapsed. Up ahead, Itachi shouted, Are we moving or not? Coming. Sasuke called back, guiding Torimiya's mount forward. Jessanina followed quietly, eyes thoughtful but unafraid. Stardance kept his head bowed now, licking his lips in appeasement. Sasuke allowed himself a small, private smirk. One thing was certain. No one was ever going to doubt Itachi Uchiha again. Night settled fully over the camp. The Kirin had been fed and tethered at a careful distance, their massive forms half silhouetted by starlight. The fire had burned down to a steady bed of coals. Dinner was long finished, packs arranged, perimeter checked. Itachi and Sasuke traded watch with the ease of long habit. Sasuke, as always, took the first shift. His mind ran fast at night, too fast to sleep without exhausting at first. Itachi, on the other hand, carried the calm of someone forged by years of battle and discipline. When it was time, he could sleep anywhere, anytime. Now it was time. Sasuke returned from the perimeter, shoulders finally relaxing. He yawned, stretched, and gave Itachi a look that said, "I'm done," without needing words. Itachi smiled faintly and brushed his mind against Sasuke's. Just a touch, a reassurance. Pride. Affection. "You did well." Sasuke responded automatically, warmth flickering back through the link, then curled into his sleeping bag in the familiar way that told Itachi he was gone in moments. True to form, Sasuke was asleep almost instantly. Itachi expanded his senses outward, slow and methodical. Forest, wind, Kirin, horses, Jessanina, Tormiya, nothing out of place. Satisfied, he settled into his watch, alone with the fire and his thoughts. He wasn't alone for long. Soft movement disturbed the quiet. Jessanina sat up, carefully extricating herself from her sleeping bag. She moved with deliberate grace, crossing to the fire and stopping just outside its glow. Itachi turned slightly, alert but not hostile. "Can't sleep," he murmured. Her head lifted. "The child sleeps," she said, and her voice was no longer the girl's. It was deeper, resonant, layered. "But words must be exchanged between us." Her eyes glimmered, reflecting firelight in an inhuman way. Itachi inhaled slowly. "To whom am I speaking?" he asked, tone respectful. A soft chuckle answered him. "You already know," the voice replied. "But I will give you the name I wear. I am German, Hachibi, the eight-tailed Leviathan." Itachi bowed his head immediately, acknowledging both power and presence. "To what do I owe this honor?" he asked quietly. German's gaze drifted to Sasuke's sleeping form, and something gentler passed over her borrowed features. "So rare," she murmured. "Kindness. Both of you carry it so naturally. Do you know how precious that is to one who almost never receives it?" Itachi considered his answer carefully. "I think I do," he said at last. "Before I left my village, there were only two people who showed me true kindness. One is sleeping there." His voice tightened almost imperceptibly. "The other died because I failed to protect what mattered." German closed her eyes, a slow, knowing nod. "Then you understand," she said. "I treasure my host because she is gentle in a world that punishes gentleness. And she treasures you, especially your brother, because you treat her as human, not as a vessel, not as a weapon." She looked back to Itachi, eyes bright. "For that, you have my gratitude." Itachi inclined his head. "I receive it with respect. To repay it," German continued, "I give warning." Itachi straightened subtly. "I am listening. Those who hunt us are not only servants of the one who bound me," she said. "They are dangerous, but predictable. The greater threat lies elsewhere." She paused, choosing her words. "Two figures. Black cloaks. Red clouds." Itachi's eyes narrowed. He did not interrupt. "They are powerful," German went on. "Together, they are formidable. Alone, they are less than you. But strength is not their greatest danger." "Will they act together?" Itachi asked. "I do not believe so," she replied. "The one of water despises the one of serpents, and he is correct to do so." Her tone darkened. "The serpent is the greater threat. He honors nothing. He seeks power without restraint, and he would covet your eyes if given the chance." Cold clarity settled into Itachi's bones. "I will remember," he said softly. "There is more," German added, and hesitated. Itachi waited. "The bond you share with your brother," she said slowly, "is becoming double-edged." His brow furrowed. "Explain." "You were bound at his birth," she replied. "That bond might have weakened with time. Instead, it was nurtured, strengthened." Her gaze drifted upward, unfocused, as if peering beyond the present. "You are no longer simply connected. You are linked. If this continues, the fall of one may drag the other with him." Itachi frowned. "How is that possible?" "The bond tightens as you grow," German said. "Emotion, Reliance. Shared will. Two moving as one. She shook her head slightly. I lack the words to explain it fully. Itachi stared into the fire, thoughts racing. The ease of their telepathy. Sasuke's uncanny ability to read him. The instinctive certainty that wherever Sasuke stood, that was where he belonged. You said we nurture this bond, Itachi said carefully. Is there a way to stop? Yes, German answered simply. Live apart. The word struck like a physical blow. Itachi looked at her in disbelief. Live apart. From Sasuke. The idea was hollow. Impossible. Worse than death. German watched his reaction calmly. You see? You are bound. Itachi turned his gaze back to the fire. If Sasuke died, the thought completed itself without resistance. I would follow, not out of duty, not out of despair, because there would be no reason to remain. The realization didn't frighten him. What frightened him, what truly shattered him, was the image of Sasuke dying alone. That terror felt absolute. And beneath it all, right? Itachi closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, German was already retreating, her presence sinking back into the quiet girl curled in her sleeping bag. The fire crackled softly. Itachi remained on watch, the night deeper now, not with danger, but with understanding. Some bonds were never meant to be severed, even if they burned. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share, and do comments.